This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hey there everyone, and welcome back to In Range. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 7. Now in our last couple of episodes, we've been talking about both breakfast and lunch and some good food choices to make for those meals. So this time we're going to be talking about dinner. Now, as with most other meals, dinner I try to keep a balance between the carbs and the protein, but there are a couple other guidelines that I like to follow too. Now, for the most part, I don't really have as many carbs for dinner as I do with another meal, say lunch. But I do try to keep a nice balance between everything. So like a typical dinner for me will consist of mainly some kind of meat, say chicken, beef, pork in this case, fish would also be a good choice. And then I try to balance that out with a little bit of vegetable and then just a little bit of carb, be that from bread, pasta, something like that. That's typical for me, but there are some rare occasions where I have a very carb-laden dinner, say like a pasta dish or something like that. Practically all carbs. In that case, that's fine. You can still have that. But when you do, be careful to always balance that out with some kind of protein. In this case, there's actually some beef that goes with the pasta. But something like spaghetti, where it's just pasta and tomato sauce, you want to have some kind of a protein with that. So you want to be careful about balancing that out. Now, if you've ever tried to eat pizza, you know that it has some mysterious power over people with diabetes. Now, it affects people with type 1 more than people with type 2, but it seems like no matter what you do, or at least what I do, right after I eat it, just an hour or so after I eat it, my numbers just crash, go completely low. A couple hours later, they go back really high, low 300s sometimes. Now, this is something that's always really confused me, and in fact, there was a period of several years where I just did not eat pizza. Now, fortunately, recently a friend of mine told me his secret for dealing with it. So the science of pizza is this. If you look at pizza, it has two things in abundance. Carbs, the crust is filled with them, and protein, slathered with cheese. Now, this is kind of interesting. What happens is the huge amount of protein, where protein usually slows down how fast carbs are absorbed into your system, protein actually delays it in this case for some mysterious reason. So really what's happening is when you give yourself insulin for a slice of pizza, that insulin goes into you, but the carb hasn't been absorbed into your bloodstream yet. So the insulin just immediately goes to work, but there's no carbs for it to work on. And that's why you go low an hour or so later, because the insulin is doing its job before the carbs have reached it. So you treat the low, you get yourself back up to normal. A couple hours after that, the carbs finally make it into the bloodstream, but there's no insulin that time, so you start going high. It's really the exact opposite of what you want. It's very strange, but when you think about it, it makes sense, and there's a very easy way to treat this. What I do, I'm on a pump, and pump users can use what's called a combination bolus. Now, let me explain what that is. Basically, instead of giving all of your insulin for the pizza slice at one time, what it will do is it will split it into two parts. It'll deliver part of the insulin, like normal, right up ahead at the very beginning, but then the rest of it, it actually spreads out, and it gives you slowly over the next hour or 2 hours. Now, the formula that I started out with was splitting my dosage in half. So say, for example, I was going to get 5 units of insulin for one slice of pizza. I would get 2.5 units of insulin right up front, and then the other 2.5 units would be spread out over the next 2 hours. Now, that was just me. Your mileage may vary. You may need to tweak those settings a little bit depending on how your body reacts to it. But that's worked out pretty well for me. Now, people with injections, you're going to want to talk to your doctor about that one, because it's just, you want to be a little bit more careful with that. So, so that's really worked really well for me. I have now eating pizza for the first time in years, and that's a good dinner choice. You would think it'd be good, balance of carbs and protein. That's the whole goal. But for this case, you need a combination bolus. Now, there's one last tricky meal item that I want to talk to you about, and that is things like rice, beans, and burritos. All of them are very high in carbs and very low in protein, particularly the rice. We talked about this in another episode. Rice actually has more carbs than something like mashed potatoes, which is what you expect. So with that kind of thing, always try to balance that out with some protein. That's key. Otherwise, the carbs shoot in and they shoot back out, and then you crash. So I hope you got something out of this episode. I had a great time talking to you. As always, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. There you can find our show notes as well as our forums if you want to talk to me and other InRange viewers. And also, if you have any questions or comments, send us an email at harwoodpodcast@comcast.net. I'll catch you guys later, and good luck staying in range.